Hello and welcome back to another update as we cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war. We start out here to the west of Bakhmut, where the Russians have managed to capture the village of Ivanivske. In an assault, they managed to push through and capture the northern parts, after which they, with control over the heights, they continued the storming of the village itself, gaining fire control of it, leading them to gain full control of it and capturing the fortifications both to the north and in the southern outskirts of the village. With this, we are seeing a new stage here to the west of Bakhmut. The Russians will now look to gain full control over the canal line. This will happen in two directions, to the south and to the north of Ivanivske. In the southern direction, the Ukrainians hardly have any fortifications. This leads to a significant advantage for the Russians with the control over Ivanivske. We'll likely see positional fighting taking place here in the forest area, after which the Russians will look to flank the Ukrainian positions by going in a southern direction. In the meantime, the Russians will push through the northern parts of Klishchivka to push through the fortifications here and attack and pincer the Ukrainian forces fortified in the area here in between. They will be sandwiched between the eastern and western parts of the east of the canal. With these assaults, the Russians will also likely look to push through from the south by Andreevka to add another part to the fighting. So with this, the Russians will likely look to attack from the east, north, and south to pincer and group up, cutting off the Ukrainian supplies, as well as flanking their positions in the fortifications, encircling them, and cutting them off completely from any retreat. The Russians will look to completely collapse the Ukrainian southern flank of Bakhmut, and with that, the Russians would be able to secure the front line along the canal to the south and all the way through to Ivanivske. As for the northern parts, we have a series of fortifications on the Ukrainian side here to the south of Bohdanivka. It is likely that the Russians will either attack the west of Ivanivske from one of two directions, either from the northern direction pushing through the fortifications in the open fields before moving into the forest area to push and flank the Ukrainian fortifications at the outskirts of the forest area. Or they may do the opposite, where they will push through the Ukrainian fortifications at the outskirts of the forest area, gaining a foothold within the forest area and bypassing the Ukrainian fortifications by moving through that area. At the same time, we will likely see an increase in activities by Bohdanivka, where the Russians will look to push through by the railways and bypass the fortifications from the north, allowing them to flank the Ukrainian fortifications in that direction. There's the Ukrainian fortifications to the north of Bohdanivka, which the Russians will likely try to bypass by pushing through the southern parts rather than pushing through the north, after which they'll flank those positions as well by moving in a northern direction. So with this, we can see that the Russians will likely start pushing to the north and south of Ivanivske, which will use the village itself as a springboard to advance and gain control over the northern and southern flanks of Bakhmut, aligning the front line by the canal line and starting operations in the direction of Jazov Yar itself. Moving away from the front line and not regarding the war itself, a tragic incident happened in Moscow, where a terrorist attack happened in the northwestern parts of the city, where over 100 Russian civilians were killed. This incident was very tragic, and it has had a huge impact on Russian society. I'm not going to go in depth as to what happened or what the implications are, who is behind it, and all of these things. I'll just wait for official confirmation from official sources after the official investigation. All I can say is that this was a tragedy, and it hurts to see it happen for no reason. And my condolences are sent to the victims and their families in this tragedy.